Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the News Memorandum. I'm JJ, your host, and this is our very first episode. And today I'm using Skype, but I hope to be using StreamYard in the future if I can figure it out. So we're just winging it. And I have my lovely, talented friend Ella joining us from Manhattan. She's been so gracious to be a guinea pig for the first conversation. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome you to the show. Ella, how are you, my friend?
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Of course, I love being a guinea pig. Why not?
You're a good sport.
There's nowhere I'd rather be.
Oh, you're so awesome. I love your background.
I had to set it up for you, make it look like, I'm working. So we have
You're always working.
Some things in process that I need to finish that I'm hoping by looking at them, eventually I will finish. And then some things that are already finished.
Awesome. So I know about you, but can you tell our listeners, our audience, a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Oh, God. Yeah, sure. So my name's Ella. I guess now I'm a costume designer and a stylist. We're still working on the titles. I don't like titles, but I started my career as a fashion designer. I graduated from Parsons and then went to apprentice at Iris Van Herpen. I came back to New York and no one wanted to give me a job. So too many ideas. So I started my own brand, which was called Dobbs. And I sold at ABC and a couple stores in LA and in Japan. And then Instagram popped up and people started asking me to style shoots and thought I was a stylist and didn't realize I was making the clothes. So I said yes, and I became a stylist. And it's been a journey ever since. So I style and I do one-offs and make things for people that I love and some people, who are special. And yeah, it's a journey. I don't know. All the things.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
great. So I was actually watching one of your videos that you did in 2020, deconstruction design, and you were talking about using garbage.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about that?
Of course. So when I started, so my clothing brand was called Dobbs, and Dobbs is an acronym for date of birth. So the whole idea was that this collection of clothes would be a physical timeline representative of me, and just, if we're talking about Harry Potter, essentially Horcruxes, each piece was a piece of my soul that I left on the planet. And I was working on some things and I was still applying for jobs. I wasn't totally 100% dead set on starting a brand yet. I was in my 20s and I applied for a job at this company and they sent me an email back saying that my work was garbage. And that kind of lit a fire under my ass. And I was like, oh, my work is garbage. Well, I'm going to make a collection out of garbage and I'm going to send it to you. And we'll see who's saying my work is garbage. So when I started doing that, sustainability wasn't really like, the idea obviously existed. People were doing it, but it wasn't as mainstream as it is now. So me doing my research and calling mills and literally asking like, hey, can I go through your garbage? Like, what are you throwing away? How does this work? And literally going to fabric mills and seeing, mountains, like factories fully loaded just of textile that they weren't going to sell because they sell wholesale and it was less than what the minimum order amount was. And it blew my mind. So I really quickly became obsessed with this idea of garbage and altering the perception of that, because to me, it wasn't a room of garbage. It was a room of resources. It was fabric that was just going to go into the earth. So I collected fabric from the mills and then I wanted to take it a step further. So I presented the collection in white And then to manipulate the fabric, I buried the textiles in compost bins that I set up in my father's basement.
I love that. That's so awesome.
Food. I mean, I went really far. My dad thought I was crazy. We need to go. I was like, restaurants throw out food. All these places throw out food. We need to go collect the food. And I mean, I live in New York City. There's so much trash on the street. It's like unbelievable. So I started contacting places asking for their produce, like their wasted produce. And I organized it by color. And I didn't know the rules of composting. I was just, throwing stuff in there, trying to, I like to say, trying to make fetch happen, like throw stuff
It's the fetch.
It's the fetch. And it happened. And I presented it and I sent it to them. And they're like, wow, this is so beautiful. And I was like, well, it's garbage.
That's amazing. Yeah, you and I share that actually, because I made this ring and I posted it on Twitter, and I had this random stranger just come on and troll me and say that it looked like hazardous waste. Like A for effort, but it looks like hazardous waste. And then I ended up calling it the hazardous waste ring.
Well, because it's fabulous. Name, hazardous waste.
That kind of thing just makes me want to rebel even harder. So I love that spirit about you, and just, finding the beauty in things that other people just think are trash or think are ugly, that kind of thing. So it's exciting and awesome. So I have questions here, but I want to just kind of do a loose, fun thing today with you. Do you have any unusual, standout stories or antics that you could share with us about maybe the strangest thing that's happened along the way, or anything like that?
I told you I went through people's garbage. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I guess that's probably strange to most people.
I think, I'll
give you that.
People. I mean, a lot of stuff has, there's been, I don't know. It's hard to pinpoint just one. There's definitely been a lot of like shocking moments.
Tell us the shocking. Let's hear it.
Moments like having clothes set on fire. Returned to you. We were so inspired that we just have a fire pit and we had your tulle dress around it. And I was like, what? They send me the video and I'm watching my dress be set on fire on the model and the music.
Wow.
Okay. Like you learn a lot. I learned a lot through experience. I will say that because I knew nothing, I was 20 something years old. I was like, I'm going to start a clothing line. And I did it and I sold places, but like I knew nothing and people were borrowing my stuff and I was so hyped on that. And then, I had my stuff set on fire. Like, I mean, I thought water was bad, but no, like set on fire, like buried in mud. And they were like, well, you buried it in dirt already. And I was like, you have to tell me like that this is not how this works. It's really interesting.
Wow. So
interesting.
Do you do anything to like protect?
So now I'm into.
Do you have like contracts so that because that's crazy. You're expecting to get your amazing hard work back to you, and then you find it's destroyed.
Yeah, and some people, they'll be like, well, it's your vibe, right? This like derelict thing, and you can't tell. And I'm like, I can tell. I made it. It's intentionally, derelict, but like not. We're not trying to do anything else. We're not trying to build upon it. Yeah, I mean, I didn't know, and you would think there's a respect thing, but there really isn't. And people are trying to get their art, and I totally understand that, but there's no respect for the artist because they just don't understand like how much effort it takes to make a thing. And when I started styling, I mean, a lot of my friends were designers and they shared the same concern with me. They're like, we're so happy that like you're going to be the one in charge of the clothes because we know that you're going to take care of them because no one takes care of them. And then when I saw how I was getting, my stuff back, I was like, this is okay. Like, this is interesting. But even with contracts, like I've had people lose things. Oh, we never got it from you. I'm like, you did. We have photos, and it's, I don't know. It's very messy and fashion's toxic. I don't know what to tell you. So like hazardous waste.
Yeah, well, I noticed in that one video that you talk about the chemicals and the toxic things and making things on your stovetop, dyeing on your stovetop in your kitchen. And so do you still pretty much always use natural products?
Yeah, I do dye sometimes now, but I'm not really as in tune with that process anymore because like you're saying, it's really about attributing value to things that people don't see as valuable. And through that block of time, that 5 years, I really realized towards the end that I was so attached to the process because I really self-identified with the objects that I was trying to reinvent and recreate. And when I had that realization, I was like, oh, this is really like, I need to step away from this because I'm in this cycle of like living.
Well, it's really personal. It's really personal. You're putting your heart and soul into everything.
Horcruxes, But I always use natural products because it was one, I didn't want to damage the planet anymore. I understand the durability of it. And like, if you're creating something that people are supposed to wear in real life every day, if that's the intention behind it and you want to use the natural materials, it has to stick, with something. It doesn't just stick on its own. But that wasn't my intent. I didn't really care. And maybe this is why, I'm not a great businesswoman. I was like, I don't care if you wear it in real life. I'm making it for me. And if you want to wear it, that's cool. I appreciate you and I appreciate that. But for it to live forever, like I don't think anything that's made should live forever, but also super toxic. Yeah. And the pots and pans that I cook with, I'm dying. No one comes in my house.
I loved that. I was like, oh, she's telling people, don't eat out of the pots. You would think that would be common sense, but there's not a lot of common sense in the world. So it's good to put the disclaimer out there.
It's funny because I went to, it was like a sustainable design convention thing in the city. And I met this dyer who's like very prominent in that community. And we were talking about, our work, and I showed her my work, and, we were talking about our process and everything. And she literally looked at me and she said, are you using a different set of pants? I looked at her and she's like, I know you're not, because I didn't for years. Promise me you'll get another set.
Oh my God.
I was like, oh, this is the secret. This is all this the same dirty secret. None of us have different pants.
Oh, well, I can relate too, because I've done things to treat metals here, and I'm still using the same pants. But of course, it's like, don't, do as I say, not as I do, with that kind of thing. So, what I wanted to ask you was, how do you keep all of these pieces once they're done being used? Do you have, I know you have a rack behind you, but do you have some kind of storage for everything?
My front closet.
How big is that closet?
Not that big, but let me tell you, everything's vacuum sealed. Like everything is vacuum sealed and stacked in suitcases suitcases in the closet. I mean, some of the stuff people have bought, like surprisingly, the garbage clothes, like people did buy them. Sometimes people have bought them later in life, or, they got used for, I do costume design for my friend's skincare brand, Hildegard. So sometimes they get used for that, and then they end up in the archive for Hildegard. They've all kind of gone to live a life of their own. Some of them are still here, and I keep them safe and, ziplocked and put in suitcases and stacked in my closet. But they don't, I will say, like, because I didn't use any of the chemicals and the fixatives and all this kind of stuff, they are eroding like over time, and they look completely different now than how they were when they first, came out of the bin, to how when I presented them. They're still evolving and they're still falling apart, and the colors are still transforming. And I think there was one point where I didn't have them in plastic. I kind of just had all the garments together. And then I think there was some kind of chemical reaction, because they all kind of became.
Wow.
Every time I open the archive, it's like a surprise, like, oh, what is it going to look like this time?
That's very cool, because it's still, it's basically like us as people. We're changing and evolving on a regular basis. So it's kind of just sort of repeating the process of life.
I think so. And that's what I really like that about it. And I've had people ask me like, oh, would you go back and you should change it? And I don't like that the color didn't stay, and I prefer the pink color. And I'm like, well, why? Like, it's taking its natural course. You can prefer something at whatever time, but this is what's meant to be. This is the course. Rest, and you leave it alone. Protecting my children.
Yes, that's awesome. I love that. And what you were talking about before with how, we were talking about how you put so much of yourself into your projects, and it's hard to let go and not feel so connected in the, eventually after everything is said and done, and you have to kind of learn to let it go. How are you, is it just like experience and time where you've been able to just allow things to have a life of their own and go off into the world like your children, like you're saying, or is it still really difficult to do that?
I think experience and time, because once I started, I made, so I have a story. So you wanted a story?
Lots of stories.
When I first presented, the very first, we can call it the garbage collection. It was called 217. When I first presented that collection, I presented in a store on the Lower East Side in New York City. And the store was like affiliated with an app, and they were promoting my ready to wear. So they wanted first dibs on this project. And I was like, great. So we took over the store, and, I had all the clothes suspended in frames because I wanted to present them as art. And I didn't, to do that in a very literal way by not having them on a body. So people had to like look at them. And at the end of the show, I was walking around, and it was clearing out. And this woman came up to me, and she was on the phone. And she was on the phone, she was talking, she was going through all the stuff. And she comes up to me and she goes, are the pieces for sale? And I hadn't thought about it, because
of course,
buy them. And I was like, I guess, sure. She was like, do you have a number? And I was like, for which one? She was like, for all of them. And I was like, what? I'm confused. She's just on the phone. She's just on the phone, like on the phone. She's like, do you have a number? And I was like, I have to think about it. I was like, do you want to offer me a number? I was like, maybe you offer me a number and we can talk about it. And she kept walking around. She grabbed, like, I had brochures and whatever, pamphlet, whatever you want to call them. I had all the papers. She grabbed all the paperwork, and I never heard from her again. And to this day, I am so angry. I did not sell the entire thing.
Oh man.
Like, I think as an artist, like to learn to let it go is probably the hardest thing. But that was my first mistake. I was like, I should have sold the whole thing. Why didn't I sell the whole thing? And I wanted to shoot it. Like I wanted to have that experience of like being a designer. I wanted to shoot it in editorials and like have it in magazines. And I did all that. But I was like, fuck, I could have had, I don't know what the number. But now I will say when I started working with clients, one-on-one clients, and creating stuff for them, that really changed the experience for me. And I just did costumes for Nika for Zola Jesus, and she's one of my favorite people to work with. And we have a very like symbiotic, it's very strange relationship that I'm very grateful for, where we just trust each other. And we're always, I don't know, like she can give me, for the last thing we made, she gave me 3 inspiration images in a couple days, and I banged out an outfit in a day, and it was right on the money. But watching her come to life in the clothes and like feel a sense of power and embody everything she wants to embody and like is trying to communicate, like knowing that my clothes are a vehicle or like a step to help her get to that place really fulfills me in a different way. And this was the first time this last week that I've ever seen her in person wearing my stuff live. Like I've always seen pictures, video. It's been like 6 years. And I've never seen it, but I got to see it. And we talk about it. She's like, you give me such power. And I'm like, oh yeah, sure, whatever. I saw it. And I was like, it's, when you see people come to life, and even with other clients I have too, I see them, like I see the face light up and they transform and they're standing differently. And like, it makes me not want to keep it anymore, because I'm like, I just want you to have it so you can feel that whenever you want. And then it's selfish, but like I do get like a set that for me is so fulfilling and so like gratifying that I am, a part of that process. Like that joy is more valuable than me having the physical thing. Like I don't need the thing. Like that reaction is like, it's everything to do that for somebody.
Yeah, I totally relate to that. That's how I feel now too, because sometimes I make a piece and I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can, if it's got a like really amazing stone or something, but I've had to just learn to let it go. And it's the same thing when a client just is so happy. Yeah, it makes it a lot easier to let go and to just let that piece bring them the kind of feeling that you get from creating something and being connected to it. So it's very cool.
Yeah, like you gave me that ring with the crazy, I can't remember the name. I can always forget the name, but I remember like when I looked up this stone, it came at like the perfect time.
Oh, it's the Brookite.
That's right. The Brookite. It came at the perfect time in my life. And I was like, oh, this is perfect. Groundbreaking. Like, it's a powerful thing. It's a power, like it's a superpower that artists have to, be able to share and connect. And it's really amazing that we get to do that for one another and we get to do it for other people. Makes it all worth it in a way.
Yes. All the years of struggles and odd jobs and all of that.
All the suffering.
So have you had a bunch of part-time jobs and things like that along the way?
Oh yeah. All the jobs. That's how we met.
I know. I'm so grateful for that too, because it was such a it was such a funny thing, because I would just stop in and be desperate to have some, like normally I have things lined up, but I was so overwhelmed constantly making and doing and selling and all that stuff. It was so great to have that store around the corner on my way home, and then just to meet you there. It was awesome. So it was obviously meant to be.
Was. Oh, should we explain? So
yes, we should. Go ahead.
Does anybody know it? We just know what the store is. So the store,
Yes.
store was the Evolution store, which used to be in Soho, which is now in NoHo, which is where we met at that location. So I was really grateful. After school, my friend was doing taxidermy and she was like, they need a part-time person at the Evolution store. And I was like, perfect. I'm going to sell dead things to children. I was like, great. And on and off. Yeah. I mean, I worked there on and off for years, and they really became my family. And it was funny because the owner of the store, when I first applied, did not want to hire me. I showed up and he saw my resume and he sat in front of his daughter, who was HR at the time. His daughter's now the owner. And then the manager at the time, who's like, why would we want to hire this fashion person to work in our store? I don't want a fashion person to work in our store. And I was standing right there and they were like,
oh my God,
like her. So we're gonna hire her. And it was me and like a motley crew of people who, like, on my first day made me eat ants and bugs.
I didn't know that.
I went through a hazing. I earned my place at that store. I earned my place. And then, yeah, they really are. I mean, they're still my family. Like the owners of the store are still, and my friends who work there, they don't work there anymore, but they're my family. My family was at that store. And I left and I went and worked in Europe for a year and came back, and then I left again and came back, and they always had a place for me. Even if I was like, can I come in like 1 day a week? Can I come in 2 days a week? And the upstairs, the store was split into 2 levels. I mean, the upstairs was my showroom part of the time.
Wow, that's incredible.
Well, not like, I mean, it was, if someone was coming to pull, I would set it up real quick. People were pulling clothes out of the Evolution store and everyone would come in, oh, this makes sense. This makes sense. But it'll never leave me. One of my friends just texted me, her daughter wants a skull.
Can you hook us up with a skull?
Yeah, she's like, she wants a skull. Can you help us get a skull?
Wow.
So
did you get her the skull?
I'm working on it.
Okay.
This morning, the order's in place. I got to figure out what kind of skull. I got to figure out if she's allowed to have a real skull. There needs to be an animal skull. If we're going to do a resin skull, a lot of options, all this useless information.
Wow.
But yeah, a lot of odd. I mean, I was working there when I had dogs. I was working there. I was also assisting stylists, ironically, when I had my brand. So I was working at the store, assisting stylists, and then trying to have my brand all at the same time.
Well, that's a great example of all the things you have to do when you're an artist to make things work. You have to be willing to make things work that way.
Yeah.
For most people, most of us don't just get handed a whole career or, a bunch of clients or notoriety or anything. We have to really fetch and make it happen. So that's a great example.
That's everything. It's crazy. Yeah.
So yeah, we met there. I was doing the market around the corner, the Nolita market, artisan market, and slaving away myself, I was living in my little 10 by 11 room, couple 10-minute walk away, and making everything on my floor and selling everything 3 days a week for 10 hours a day on the weekend. And I would stop into the Evolution store, which was only a couple blocks from my apartment. And what's that?
Conveniently.
Yes, conveniently. It's amazing. And just check out whatever rocks and specimens were available and go, oh God, I can make that work. Yeah, it's huge. And so I really appreciated you being there and meeting you there. And us weirdos, we just hit it off.
I know. It was just meant to be. I was like, she's making something. Finally, someone comes in, she's making something. I need to talk to someone who makes things. Selling things all day. Oh my God.
It was a great experience. So Oh, you said something before. So working in small spaces,
Oh my God.
are you still making everything out of your apartment?
Yeah, there's nowhere else to make it. And where like someone wants to give me a studio, I'll gladly take it, but it's got to be up here because I'm not schlepping all this shit somewhere else. You know what I mean? But yeah, I make everything here. I mean, I have more space now than in the loft. Before I was in a loft and I mean, my bed was upstairs with the fabric storage. And then my, living room was my sewing table, my machine. There was sometimes the sofa disappeared. And then just racks. So under the loft was this wooden built out thing. And there were support beams. I put bars, like clothing rack bars in between every support beam. So it was just like a closet of all, and not even my personal clothes, just like a closet of the archive. Because that was the only place I could put it. I didn't have room in the closet in that space. And that apartment was really special because it was my like work breathing, space. And I had a lot of people who just wanted to come, like when I was making this, oh, can we come to the apartment? And I'd be like, do you come to the apartment? It's like, it was like this big, like, do you have to come to the apartment? But they wanted the whole experience. And some people still want to come here, which I find really bizarre because it's not glamorous. It's like,
I love it. You have a great space.
Yeah, you've been here.
Yeah, it's jam-packed with goodies. I mean, you've got really great antiques and
oh my God.
It's still kind of small, but I think it's a good space for what you're doing, especially
for the one-off.
Hearing where you came from.
Yeah.
With that other place. So.
I love the other place though. I love this place too. Don't take it away from me. I loved the other place. I think because I'm attached because that was like the birth of everything. And now that I'm doing only one-offs, this has become like the museum, like like you were saying, all the knickknacks, all the,
I love it.
All the things all over the place, all the props.
But that's inspiring too, to have all that stuff hanging around you. And I mean, I think as artists, we still, no matter what the project is, we still kind of circle back to past projects to get inspiration, right?
Yeah.
Do you find that?
I find that. And I find also just like I need to live in my world when I make something. I can't be in somebody else's space. You know what I mean? Like it has to be your space with your things, and it has to be. I can't. That's why I've had people offer me studio space, and I'm not comfortable working in a studio space. I want to work in my living room with all my things in case I need something. I know it's there. And also like that white, sterile environment. If I was mass producing, maybe, but not when it's like, this intuitive process where I need to be like connected with myself and who I'm creating for. And like, I need to be in a calm, meditative space. Otherwise I'm not getting the results that I need. I'll be so stressed out.
So how is that when you, like, I know you recently had to travel and you were away for a block of time. How does that work for you when you're trying to put things together in that kind of space with other people all swirling around you and all the different personalities and other people's energy? Is it challenging?
Sometimes it depends on the energy. I did a shoot in Mexico, and originally it was supposed to happen in LA, and all the costumes were going to be shipped to LA, and I thought I had ample time, and I was, together. And 3 days before, I get a text from the producer saying, we've moved everything, to Mexico. You're going to have to come with all the costumes to Mexico, and we're going to shoot here. At the time, nothing had been confirmed in terms of fabric, in terms of silhouettes, sizing, actors, nothing. So I started the costumes here and I flew with the rest to Mexico. I've never been to Mexico. I was out of the country since COVID. And I was like, great, I'm going by myself to Mexico with 10 yards of fabric. I think it was more than that. I had a whole suitcase of just fabric. And I had to build everything on site there. I met the dancers, whatever, for the first time there. And I had to build everything there. And I had my little sewing kit. And we're like, okay, let's figure something out, and didn't know what locations we were shooting in, didn't know like what the elements were going to be. Apparently, people were going to get in water. Like I knew that, but I didn't know we were going to hike up mountains and be in, ancient ruins and like,
wow.
So it was, in that kind of situation, I've come to accept like I can only do as much as I can do. And that has to be it. I'm not in a place where I'm pushing myself to go beyond what my capabilities are. I'm one person.
And you do a lot on your own.
One man. So like, I can only manage what I can manage. And then that's it. The kitchen is closed. Like, this is what it's going to be. And you have to accept it. But yeah, in that case, I did what I could do. They were happy, they approved, and I was like, hey, great, this is what we're gonna do. And if I had, if I had a machine, if I had help, if I had, it could have been different and I could have done more, but I used to always think about that, like, oh, this could have been so much better, and this could have been this. There's always another job. There's always another opportunity. Like, I will get to make ghosts again. Somebody else me to make ghosts and ghouls and swamp things. Like, somebody will ask. I will have another chance to make another swamp thing, but this is what it was. It's great. We love it. I know the situation. It's great. I think you kind of just have to own it, because if I sit there harping over it, I'm not going to want to do the next thing. I'm just,
I think that's very good advice for people out there listening, because I operate the same way these days. I just can't, like, if you try to just hold on to something and perfect it, and it's like it can be very limiting and also counterproductive to hold things so precious and to try to make everything so perfect. So it's a good message for people out there to just stay really fluid and flexible, and just kind of go with the changes and work with what you have and do the best and just move on, so that you don't get stuck. Because as artists, we can really get stuck in that kind of process.
Forever. Just forever. One thing forever, and you'll never see the light of day. There's no, like, thank God I had a deadline.
Yes.
Love it.
Gotta keep it moving. Keep it moving.
Okay, great. Perfect. Camera's up in 2 hours. Great.
So has that helped alleviate a lot of the stress? Because I know what you do, it has to be a high stress level all the time, dealing with different clients and deadlines and things going wrong and not having things available. So has that helped along the way as you've had more experience to kind of manage your time better and reduce some of your stress levels, or is it still just always crazy stressful?
Part of me gets off on the stress. Like, I like it. I like having some stress, because if I have no stress, I'm bored. I like some kind of stress. So part of me like enjoys the, like, okay, we're gonna check this and I need to get that. And I like having stuff to do. But also, I always know I know everything's gonna go wrong. No matter how much I prepare, like, everything is gonna go. I was prepping a shoot yesterday all day. This morning, I get the text, talent bailed out. Now I have all this stuff coming from Europe and there's no shoot. Like, everything goes wrong.
Oh my God.
Everything goes wrong, but there's nothing I can do about it. If that's what's meant to happen, that's what's meant to happen. And I've kind of gotten to a place where I just don't care, because
That's great.
if I spend the time worrying about it, being upset and stressing about it, I'm wasting energy on that when I could be spending my energy, okay, well, this thing didn't work out. Now what are we going to do? Like, what do we have? Are we shooting anyone else? Can I just hold on to the stuff and save it for that person? Like, you know, I find that, like, for me, I wasted a lot of time being stressed when I didn't need to be, because ultimately everything, you know, I think everything sorts itself out, even if everything goes wrong and people are horrible at all. Even when people are horrible, it all sorts itself out. For all the horrible people, there's one good person in there. There's one, thank God. You know?
So, oh yeah, thank goodness for those.
Just the ones.
Even if it is just one person.
Yeah, it changes everything. One person changes everything. So I've gotten to a place where I don't care. And my intern was like, she's like, I've never seen you really nervous. I'm like, yeah, because it doesn't matter. Like, none of this, for my case, it's fashion. Like, it's just, it's fashion. Who cares? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying
love that.
I'm not like doing surgery or like creating medicine or curing a disease. Like, I'm dealing with clothes. Who cares? And anyone I work for saw it, they'd probably yell at me, but like, it's just fashion. Like, we're just making, you know, art and things to inspire people. And like, yeah, there's a business behind it and all that stuff, but it's fashion. It's okay.
Well, and it's a contribution to our society, the way things are shaped around fashion. And yeah, it's just clothes. And I love that you have that attitude that everything is really just disposable in the end of it all, and you just make something new. I mean, as a creator, I think that's probably the best outlook on things, is to just realize that everything here in this world is temporary. We're all temporary, and just look forward to the next creation.
Yeah, that's what I think. You love it while you have it, and then, you know.
Yeah. Gone with the wind. Dust in the wind.
And that doesn't make it any less valuable.
Right.
But that
was here.
Was here. Yeah, it was.
And it might stick around for generations just as a myth or a story, or it might live on in a museum or something, but
or in someone's life, in someone's hand, whatever, you know, like, you don't know.
Love that.
I know. My voice is, I'm sorry.
You know, you're fine. You're good.
We're so close to it being fully.
I'm glad that you're nearly back to normal.
It was, let me tell you.
I bet.
I ironically was watching, do you remember that Joan Rivers show that she had with her daughter? Do you remember this?
Somewhat, yeah.
She had a reality show with her daughter, and I was just watching it for, I don't know why. And my sister came home and she was like, you sound like Joan Rivers. I was like, no. And then I sat there, and there's this one clip where she's like, if God wanted me to exercise, he would throw diamonds on the floor. And I sat there and I was like, holy shit, I am Joan Rivers. I was like, this isn't good. How do we stop this? And I was like, you can't. She's fabulous. You're fabulous. There's no choice. This is it.
Wise words.
I know. She, you know, sometimes she can be right about it. I was like, I'll let you have this. I'll let you have Joan Rivers. It's fine.
Well, you sound fabulous to me all the time.
Yeah.
Perfect. So, what are some of the things that inspire you? Do you dream a lot? Do your dreams play into the inspiration for creating pieces? What are some of the things that you draw the inspiration from?
If I'm making something for someone, it's different than when I'm making something for myself, right? And I know you nodded, so I know you
I totally know this.
Like when I'm making something for myself, it's this whole, like, the making process for me is really cathartic, and it's all about communicating. So my work communicates narrative that I'm not able to, or that I feel I haven't properly communicated verbally. I communicate the narrative through the clothes. So in that way, it's, paying attention. It's really an intuitive process, I guess. And keying in just to signs and signals around me of things that I should be paying attention, just trying to be self-aware. Sometimes it comes through dreams where I have, the dream is like telling me something. But when I work with a client, if I'm working with an artist, it's really, it sounds weird, but I'm kind of trying to channel whatever energy, I guess, they're telling me they want to channel through the final product, if that makes sense.
It totally does. And that's definitely very intuitive.
Yeah. So like when I work with Nika, like we did costumes for her tour, her last tour. And I guess we did one for this one, but the last tour, we did a lot of costumes, and I had, I heard the music early, and I literally spent weeks where I would just sit, and that was the only thing I would listen to was the album on a loop, days, like walking around for days, looping the album and just kind of writing down what the album made me feel, what it made me see. Like I would, the first track, like I sounded, she's like, there's this whole thing with her breath and it sounds like she's running. So I was like, okay, how do we mimic the movement of running? And then she's running probably through the woods because she's from the woods. So how do we make her stand out in the woods? And it's very like, there's something like very visceral kind of about it. And I was like, okay, how do we get this color? And what does that mean? What does that look like? So I'm trying to build what I'm feeling in response to what they give me. And obviously, I talk to them about it and I'm like, am I on the right page? And I'm like, yeah, you're on the right page. And if I'm not, then I hear them and hear what they say. And, it feels like this. I need texture. I need this. It's, and then obviously logistics go into it. Like,
yeah,
something needs to be a short, needs to be in mobility and that kind of stuff. But I start from the feeling and then kind of
you build
this. Yeah. Whatever this.
You're building, it's picture.
Building.
I got you.
Picture. Yeah. And, I have people who inspire me like all the time. Like Daphne Guinness is a really big inspiration for me. And I've had the opportunity to make things for her and meet things for her. And that was really like blew my mind because I just love people who live as their authentic selves unapologetically. There's no reason to. I mean, why not? Not all of us. I mean, she's the heir to Guinness, and all of us are blessed, with the background to do that. But you can do it at your level in your way,
right?
And I'm always very responsive to people who just kind of, that really inspires me. People just unapologetically being and existing in the earth, because I know in this, that's a hard thing to do in this climate too. It's a really hard thing to do.
It really is.
It's a really hard thing to do. And I really applaud people who, I think it's really brave to do that.
Yeah. And I mean, as far as I know of you, you really think outside the box and push the boundaries on everything. So it makes sense.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Just people to where they want to be. I'm a
let's see, what else did I want to ask you before we go? So I know that you do see everything as temporary and sort of disposable and all that, but is there anything that you're hoping to leave as an impact here in this world?
I think in terms of object, it doesn't matter. But in terms of like, I would like to make, I think that feeling, giving people that the people who have made things for, I'd like to leave them with that feeling. And also for other people who are, if they see the work, to think about what it means and to think about, if it is the garbage thing, like, oh, maybe reevaluate or just have a thought about the perspective of garbage, or, just thinking about clothes in a different way and our physical body in a different way and how we, communicate through that. Because I'm really obsessed with that. I've always been obsessed with that. And I think that's why I haven't let go of this yet. I haven't let go of this clothing thing yet in any form of like, I need to do something with clothes. I'm really obsessed with, communicating through the physical body through clothes. Like, I'm obsessed with it. So if I could, start the conversation to challenge, what we use clothes for and what their purpose is, and maybe evaluate, make people think about investing in them and not buying 5 million things all the time, and, putting some value into what they, intention into what they purchase, and seeing the purpose of it and all that stuff, so everyone can experience that feeling of like being seen as they are,
as an individual,
for who they are, unapologetically, with no judgment, just as they are, confidently. I'd like to start the conversation of that.
Well, I think you already have. I think you already have in a big way.
I
think you're doing a good job.
Thanks. I'm going to keep trying.
So was there anything that got me thinking, when you were younger, when you were a kid, did you always want to do fashion, or did you have other things that you were interested in at the time?
This was the only plan. Do you know this story? I'll tell you the story.
I might, but
you probably know this story. So I was really obsessed with makeover shows. Like a kid. It's my favorite thing.
Love that.
Obsessed. I had stacks of notebooks I used to hide. And we had an art drawer. There was one place art was allowed in my house. We had one art drawer in the guest room, and I hid all the notebooks in there, and they were filled with drawings of people that I would see on TV, on either the makeup shows, and then I went to like other shows where I would give people makeovers, and I'd be like, no, you need to wear this. Your hair needs to look like this, and you should do this. I'd have notes, and I'd like write notes.
Wow.
Because I saw that happen. They come out and it's like, I feel so great. And I was like, that's amazing. And I grew up in a very like controlled environment where I was, made to believe that I didn't have autonomy over myself in any way, shape, and form. So this was very magical to me, that people could be like, oh, I can express myself and like be comfortable with myself. I was like, wow, this is amazing, And my mom found my notebooks, and I was so scared. I was like, oh my God, she found notebooks. This is it. It's over. Like, and she opened them and she was like, well, this is a job. This is a job. Like, people get paid to draw clothes. And I was like, what? So then on our dial-up computer, I Googled what a fashion designer was and like tried to start figuring it out. And then a few weeks, I don't know, I feel like it was a week or a few weeks later, Marc Jacobs was on Oprah, and it was like the first time he'd ever been televised. He'd just come out of rehab. And I watched that, and he's talking about, his horrific experience in rehab. I'm like 11, 13.
Oh my God.
I was like, if he can do that and be a fashion designer, I can be a fashion designer. I was like, I got this. Like, I've been through I was like, I can do it. And he went to Parsons. So that's why I chose to go to Parsons.
Wow.
And I had a sewing machine in it's in our basement. And I fixed the sewing machine, and I took classes at FIT in middle school. And I was like, I'm going to learn how to sew. I'm going to learn how to drape. I'm going to learn how to draw. And that was the plan. And I had a PowerPoint presentation that I presented to my grandfather, and he laughed in my face.
Wow, I love it.
This is why you're going to pay for it. And he was like, no.
Oh, no. But clearly you went for it anyway.
I did it. I did everything on the list. I went to Parsons. I moved to New York City, and I started a clothing line. I wish I'd come up with more plot points after that. Because once I finished all those things, I was like, all right, at like teenage Ella, what are we going to do now? We did everything. We checked all the boxes on the list. It didn't turn out like it turned out, but like, you know, it's not as glamorous as you thought it was going to be, but we did it. Now I'm going to figure.
It's incredible.
Yeah. So there was
you're not everybody does that. So it's amazing that you did.
Very determined. It was my one thing, you know, I was very like, that was my beacon of hope. You know, my little sneaking into the library and reading magazines. Like, everyone's supposed to be reading books. I'm like, ooh, Harper's Bazaar. Ooh. Sitting reading Vogue. Oh, read a book. I'm like, no. What? No. So yeah, it's my one thing, which is a blessing and a curse, because I'm like, oh, I should have had a backup.
But you didn't need it. You made it work.
I'm trying, you know, I'm trying to make it work better than others. But for now, you know, it's going.
It's going well, I think.
Thanks.
So do you have any new boxes to check off for yourself for the future? It's a loaded question.
It's a loaded question. Well, as an adult, you have different priorities. But in terms of career, it's funny because my intern actually started sending me, I have a wonderful intern, and she started sending me homework. She's like, these are the next things that we're going to do. She's like, we're going to start a showroom. Wow. We're going to make a documentary. We're going to start our own magazine. I was like, you got big dreams. She's like, no.
Wow.
I was like, I just want to do the Super Bowl. She was like, yeah, okay, we can do what we're going to do. I'm like, let's start with the Super Bowl. Let's get to the Super Bowl, and then we can figure out everything else in like another 20, 30 years. I don't know.
Well, I'll be waiting. I'll be waiting to see you on the Super Bowl.
Whatever sport plays at I don't know what it is, but you know, who knows? Do
you even watch football?
No.
It's all about the halftime show, right?
It's all about the show. Like, I don't know anything. I don't even watch the halftime show. I just want the opportunity to do it.
You'll get there.
You know, at some point, I got to jump through all the hoops and suffer all the things. And then eventually, you know, we'll get to something like that. I could do a couple tours first, maybe a Broadway thing. Hi, Kat.
Millie.
So cute.
It's cute for you. I have to live with her. She's being good. Whatever room I'm in, she has to be there and do something to get attention in that room. So before, she was climbing up on some boxes I have, and she's batting at the blind strings, but now she's quiet.
Oh, Millie.
So.
We hear you, girl. We hear you.
Well, I guess the last thing would be, do you have any words of wisdom to artists that are just starting out there or struggling?
I had a really great conversation with Jenny Hensler. You probably know Jenny Hensler. So
her name sounds familiar. I'm not sure.
Yeah, she did. So she was at she actually did all of Nika Zologis's costumes.
Okay.
And she did Chelsea Wolf's costumes, and now apparently she started doing cinematography, and it's really amazing. She's
Awesome.
super talented, incredibly talented woman. And she was at the show, and I had a conversation with her about finding your tribe. And I've had this conversation with so many young designers because I do mentoring at the schools. I've told so many young designers this, and nobody ever listens to me. And I've respected Jenny for a really long time. Like when I started my brand, I've followed her work, and I've always followed her work, and I think she's amazing. And we're all sitting there together, and she was like, isn't this such a moment? Like we all always end up finding each other. Like the people who understand us, the people who, resonate with each other, we all end up finding each other some way, somehow, no matter how much time has gone by. Like we all find each other. We're all part of the same tribe, and we're all in this room.
The island of the misfits.
Yeah, we all find each other. And I was so shook that she said that. I'm like, I can't believe you just said that, because I have told so many people that, and nobody believes me. And she looked at me, she's like, well, it's happened. I'm like, that's what I'm saying. As hard as it is, especially as a designer and an artist, and if you continue to be who you are and create what you want to create, the people who are meant to find you will find you and will appreciate your work and understand what you're doing and value you in the way that you want to be seen and appreciated. And fuck all those other people. Like, I just forget everybody else who doesn't get it. I feel like there's such a need, especially with social media, it's a popularity contest.
Right.
And not all of us are going to win the popularity contest. So why do you want to win the popularity contest when you can find your tribe and just, thrive in that? That's my word. Those are my words of wisdom.
Bravo. I love it.
She wrote.
So good. Well, I think this is enough torture for you. No, it's been a lot of fun, and I really appreciate you being the first to come on and talk with me and just share your experience. So thank you for that, my friend.
Anytime.
Oh, I hope we get to meet up again soon.
No.
We hopefully got some things in the fire for the future. So stay tuned, folks. But I'll end the recording here, and I'll have all your details in the notes of the show. And thank you so much.
Thank you. It was fun.
I don't know how to stop.